Recording in progress, the voice has said, and I'm very happy to say that because the recording is in progress, I can see Pat McArt. How are you today, Pat? Is the sun
I'm
shining
good.
on you?
The sun is shining on me.
Oh,
Is
we're
it
we're, we're
shining on you?
spoiled, aren't we?
Yeah,
Spoiled. We're
yeah.
spoiled. We should be suffering penance, Pat. Otherwise, we've been an awful long time in purgatory,
Oh, look. There's
and
a
in your
concept.
case, limbo probably as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, the obvious one to start with today, Pat, is Mr. Oh, yet again, Mr. Trump. I was listening to a podcast and the guy said, it was John Banville actually, that
The
novelist
writer.
from Dublin,
Yeah,
yeah. And he was talking to Dion Fanning on that
yeah.
Free State podcast that he does with Joe Brawley. Joe wasn't there today, but he said that, God, I've forgotten the point of what I was going to say now. Uh,
Yeah.
he was talking about,
No, I'll let you think about it. Let me
good idea, Pat,
when
good idea.
you think about the point you were going to make,
Mm,
Jude. I read a thing this morning about your Howard Lutnick, who's the trade czar in America.
mm,
He said came out this yesterday and said the rest of the world would be ridiculous to reciprocate the tariffs.
mm.
Canada already has. China already has. Canada, by the way, and the EU are apparently have them ready to roll. But apparently, I was watching what he called Connolly on RT yesterday,
Aye.
who's probably the superb RT man.
He is very good.
He's very good.
Tony
He
Conley.
Tony Connolly, I couldn't remember his first name there. Tony Connolly was brilliant, but he said the EU are waiting. They think there might be such a backlash even in America that they will wait and see, like with the stock market absolutely tanking and so on. But yeah, there's some great ones already. Like just using Canada, about 63% apparently of Canadians have already stopped buying American goods.
That's right. That's right.
The flights to America are down by
Hmm.
75%.
Hmm.
There's all sorts of shenanigans going on. I don't know, I was watching a thing on, I think it was Thursday. I didn't know there was such a thing in America as the Black Farmers Association, but there are. This guy is black and he's a farmer. Anyway, saying that they're really concerned that the first thing is going to be hit, and this are farmers. The Chinese, with the 34%, a lot of their stuff was exported to China. Soya beans or whatever the hell it is, I don't even
Hmm.
know. But he said by the time they get this sorted, he and most of the farmers will be gone. So Jude, and there are any number of academics and economists saying this is their stupidest thing going. Apparently, in 1929, Herbert Hoover, who was had been the Secretary of Commerce, he got into because of there was such a trade problems in America. He went with all the people who said we should be introducing protectionism, making it.
Mm.
And anybody wants to check, remember 1929, the Wall Street crash,
Yeah, yeah.
65% of the world's trade just disappeared.
Uh,
So our friend Donald Trump could be going the exact same way.
Well, I think he is, obviously. And if it keeps on going, I mean, if I would say that, well, what do you think? But do you think that if the EU retaliated, do you think that would hasten a depression even?
Yeah, of course it will. Dude, if Trump's like the Germans are going to be wondering about all their big cars, their Mercedes, their Volkswagens, their what else, their Skodas, you can name it,
Mm.
BMWs. And then the French will be on about their wine. And of course, the Irish are going to be on about the pharmaceuticals. But apparently, they're waiting until something like the 15th of April, apparently, before they're going to make any sort of, they're going to let it stew, apparently, according to Tony Connolly yesterday, just to see what sort of reaction there is in America and so on. Apparently, the pressure on Trump or in the administration from big business, like the stock market has tanked like it was COVID, like a worldwide
Mm.
sort of
Hmm.
recession. So I think there's going to be a lot of things on. But Jude, I think somebody called Trump the craziest president in about a century. And Jude, he definitely is. There's a thing on last night. He was on Air Force One, and they were going down to Florida for another golf game. And he
Yeah.
started showing the reporters his this gold credit card he's got.
Oh, I saw it. Oh, Jesus, I saw it, Pat. Isn't that
And
ridiculous? Like, is he incapable of doing anything except congratulating himself?
by the way, I don't remember her name. It's like Bloomer or Sloomer or something like that. She's 31. She's a total cultist, in the sense that she believes that President Trump is the only man can save America. And apparently she went down and talked to him. And about 10 minutes later, he fired 4 people. And the reason, and then she went on then the internet and said that she had told President Trump that these people are not loyal to him and so on. She's some sort of Looney Tune. Remember your man, InfoWars, Jones, the boy that said, some of the mass shootings never took place,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
that they were fake Republicans and all this sort of stuff. Jeez, Jude, America, it's insane. Jude, what is it? In 100 days, they have tanked the economy. They have deported totally legal people. They have threatened Canada with annexation. They said they're going to take over Greenland by force. Whatever else you can, whatever you're having yourself, you can throw in that to the pot as well.
Well, there's 2 questions, Pat, for me. One is, should the EU retaliate? And the second thing is, should Ireland be trying to make a case for itself because it's in all the foreign direct investment from the States in terms of tech and pharmaceuticals is a bit different from most of the EU states, and yet you'd want to be cohesive and united in the face of Trump the nutter. So what would you advise them? Would you advise them to hold their fire? Would you advise Ireland to try to send somebody over there? I saw someone. Who did they suggest? Oh yeah, no, that's a separate story. Apparently, Prince Andy has been in annual communication with Xi Jinping. Is it?
And China.
In China. He sends him a birthday letter every year. And they're saying, if the British government ever wants to speak to somebody or wants to get through to him, to the president of China, send Andrew would be perfect because he's in such good terms. Laughable. Laughable. But anyway, back to the serious stuff. Do you think the EU should, retaliate in kind? As you said, Canada's done it. Mexico's done it. What the hell are they waiting for?
Yeah. Well, China's done it now as well. I think without question, Trump started to backtrack very quick in Canada, and so on. And the pressure is coming across. Jude, see when all those Kentucky bourbons and all the rest, they've been cleared off the shelves in Canada, and they're told drink Canadian rye. Jude, and as I mentioned earlier, the down 76% tourism-wise. Canada is America's biggest export market, and Trump and these guys. So if Mexico, the EU, Canada, and so on, Australia, and all the rest of it start saying, right, we're not playing this game. America, I think Trump thinks he's some sort of king and he can make the rules and everybody else has to bend to his will. Dude, I think he's going to get a hell of a shock. And by the way, to answer your question succinctly, yes, I do. I think the EU should impose as hard as they can.
Well, it seems to me that Trump is doing enough damage himself, even without the EU retaliating. So, there'll be a case for... Well, I think they're going to hold on for a couple of weeks anyway and see what happens.
But I think that is the strategy at the minute, yeah.
Yeah, there's a tendency to get caught up in the moment, and it's kind of understandable as well. But you see this thing about Canadians not buying stuff in the US? Sure, I would compare that with us and Israel. No, we're not in a trade war with Israel, but I certainly wouldn't buy anything that was made in Israel. Or certainly not in the occupied territories. And that goes back to that bill that they were trying to pass in the Dáil. Was that ever passed, by the way, that occupied
territories? Not at all, no. In fact, Pascal Dunn, who allegedly told some Israeli guy, look, it'll be put on the back shelf.
Oh, God.
He denies it, of course, but when you watch the obsequiousness, I love that word, by the way, of Micheál Martin and the White House. Jude, they are not going to upset the Israelis. That occupied territories bill will never see the light of day. And then, by the way, I'd bet my house on it right now.
I would bet my house that most of the Irish people in the south would be in favour of it, and in the north for that matter, although they have no input, that they would be in favour of putting it through. For God's sake, who could possibly watch what we're seeing? And it's still happening. Last
Oh
night
no,
there was a 12 people killed.
what's going to happen is somebody in the White House I'll whisper in Michael Martin's ear, you go ahead with that against our ally Israel, and we will withdraw foreign direct investment, or we'll increase taxes. And Michael Martin said, we're living in the real world, morals don't count, so bollocks, we will not go ahead with this.
I just find it shocking. There was a case there came up recently, in fact, over the last 24 hours, I think, where something like 6 people were shot dead. And in fact, I believe they were systematically shot dead one by one. And they were aid workers and people who were there, Red Cross
Jane,
people. And they have a video of
yeah.
The Israelis said, oh no, we thought they were creeping up on us. There weren't any lights flashing. And the guy took the bloody video on his phone before he was killed, and they now have it. So they know the Israelis are lying.
Jude, I think I was reading that yesterday. They think they've got a grave where there's, what was it, 15 people? Yeah, they have UN workers. I think they were Red Cross workers. 15, they said they were executed one by one.
Yeah. Actually, in a way, we're sort of falling into a trap in that.
What do you mean?
Well, we're concerned. I've reacted sort of violently to the notion of the Red Cross people being killed, who are probably not Palestinians themselves. But I'm sure the same number of people same number of Palestinians or more were killed over that same period. So
absolutely,
I'm making a wee bit more fuss over this Red Cross thing, but I mean it deserves.
No, Jude, it's actually a point worth making, because it shows they don't really give monkeys. They will shoot anybody Jude, the fact that they shoot maybe foreigners, actually, I don't mean that's the way it sounds, but it maybe draws more attention to the fact this is what they're doing to the Palestinians all the time.
Here's one for you, Pat. If the South was to pass that occupied territories bill, or to take other measures that would make it clear that they were against what Israel is doing, and if that resulted in lots of foreign direct investment being taken out of Ireland, the south of Ireland, would you still go ahead with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Jude, there are some things more important in life and wealth than money. And I always remembered the guy, and I don't remember his name, but I've used the analogy before. Thatcher was bringing in a big factory, a Ford factory somewhere in Scotland, 20,000 workers or something, I guess. But the deal was there'd be no unions, no whatever, and the company would, and all the rest of it. She went ape when the unions wouldn't agree to it, and so on. And I remember there was a Scottish trade unionist. He said there were some jobs not worth having. There's some foreign direct investment not worth having, as if we live our life where we have no rights to condemn murder, atrocities, barbarism, oppression, subjugation. Dude, if we sit here and say, well, wait a minute, we're all right. Dude, no, that's not
good,
how I want to.
Good. It's the least we can do, I think. I really do. What about there's an article in Irish News today by a columnist, not you now, somebody else.
And they say there's more columnists in Irish News today. Jeez, I'm amazed.
Anyway,
yes,
he said that the pharmaceuticals and the big tech boys will get hit hard, and the southern economy will tighten, and austerity really will come in the south, and that will have an effect on maybe in the government. But it will certainly have an effect on unionism, because there's no way that the South, if it's going to be down to its upper, so to speak, or not be as wealthy as it is at present, it's not going to be building any roads in the north. So the unionists will be, saying, you want us to have a united Ireland with you guys and go into an impoverished state like the South and part of the EU, which is falling apart? So what do you think of that, Pat? Do you agree with that?
No, Jude, wait a minute. You know that Trump is blowing hot and cold on a lot of things. The other thing as well, Judy, everybody, Trump is saying they have 5 trillion worth of investment coming back to the States and all the rest, which is
Yeah.
1.25 per about a trillion per year and so on. Jude, I was listening to a guy not that long ago from one of the big economists, and he says, look, to set up a new factory, to go back will take a certain, no, maybe 2, 3 years. See, within about the midterms in America will be very, very interesting. See if the Democrats get a massive big lift in the midterms. Now, that's all I've said in fairness. But the
Mm.
bottom line is this: some of the American companies have literally spent billions in Ireland and plant, machinery, personnel. Jude, you don't move that out so easily. Some
Yeah,
of
but
the
I think
big
the point back that they're making,
factories,
I think the
say, go
point,
ahead.
sorry, I was going to say the point that some commentators are making is not that these present investments will pull out, but that
Yeah.
they'll not invest anymore. They'll stop investing. So it'll sort of, it's like a school closing,
Trump
there'll
will be
still be
gone in
kids
four.
going, but they'll phase them out.
But Trump will be, when he look, will be gone in 4 years, and there might
That's
be
true.
a change. But Jude, the bottom line is the other thing: the biggest market in the world is the EU. These
Yeah.
American companies are in under the door in Ireland. They're in Ireland because we speak English. There's an educated workforce. Even the bloody climate is perfection for a lot of the big computer companies. If they were in Spain, apparently what they'd be spending on electricity to keep all these computers at cool temperature would be astronomical. So we have a lot to offer. And the big American companies, the other thing as well, uncertainty is what stops a lot of investment. And right now, I am betting. I was reading the guy this morning. He's from Yale. He said a lot of the people who are talking to Trump back when things were looking good. He says since the stock markets have tanked, a lot of big companies will not be considering investing until they see how this works out. They're
All
not
right.
going to risk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not one bit surprising. I'm just wondering though what the reactions are. Is your columnist from the Irish News is he right to say that the South will cease being so generous in terms of what's going on in the North, or that they'll even just turn their faces away and not bother
Well,
with it?
in 2000, I remember the A5, the famous A5.
Yeah,
We're going to
yeah.
have what do you call it? A dual carriageway from Derry to Auchnacloy,
Aye.
400 million or something that the Irish. So the first project that was shelved the minute recession hit was that. So I presume, they're giving 40 million to McGee College. They were funding a nurses training course somewhere
Aye.
about the University of Ulster and so on, and all these waterways and so on, projects that the shared island. But the other side of the story is the South is awash with cash. What is it? The last 2 or 3 years, they have roughly 28, 29 billion pound surplus. They were talking now that this might change. They were talking about the next 2 years that the surplus would be hitting somewhere about 60 billion. Now, Jude, 400 million for roads and the great scheme of things is not massive.
Well, they're saying it was an article in the Irish Times, I think it was today, where they were talking about how the people in the Department of Finance are busy shoving as much money as they can down the back of the sofa. That
Yeah,
is to say, to put it somewhere that the government can't get their hands on it without an effort, and
yeah, yeah.
that they'll be redoubling their efforts now because the South's going to need every penny that they
Yeah,
have.
but see, the last time, Jude, they really balls it up. I remember one certain person I knew when the Troika hit town.
Uh,
Apparently, Ireland had only 4 billion in the coffers, and even for that year alone, it needed 13 billion to run the country. So they had to borrow six. And remember, even in fairness, the Brits give 6 billion in the EU.
well, they
I
didn't
think.
give, they
Yeah,
lent
but there was I
6 million.
they were the first to offer, so I'm not going to knock that. And they
Mm.
didn't even start asking a whole lot of questions about it. They handed over within a couple of days. So
Mm.
anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the bottom line, Jude, yeah, they're going to be very careful over the next couple of years, definitely.
Can we say anything with any degree of certainty, given the fact that
Oh,
Trump seems determined to change the whole economic outlook of the
mm.
world uh, through his actions? Is there any predictions we can make with any degree of certainty?
To get back to the black farmer I was watching on social media the other day, he said people in other parts of the world now will be looking to places like Brazil China in particular, they can pivot to South America where there's huge potential, etc.,
India.
etc. And the other side of the story, Jude, places like Vietnam's not maybe so good for someone, but things like electrical goods, which are made in Vietnam, will be flooding the European market dirt cheap, etc., etc.
Mm.
So there's pluses and minuses. So there's a plus side, and that like the boys who said about the climate change. Geez, if it gets warmer over here, that'll be lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes think, that brouhaha we had in the Dáil about speaking rights and
Yeah,
how it was unseemly scenes going on, it just wasn't
yeah,
suitable for a parliament. But the good part of that was that they were pulling the left together to act as an
yeah,
organized and see what they could achieve, how they could discomfort the likes of Micheál Martin and Michael, what's his head. Um,
yeah,
so that was the good side of it. The same thing applies with regard to this. The American market might be closed to people because of these horrible tariffs, but if they were to find and explore and develop new markets, like
yeah.
you say, Brazil, India is another one. There's all sorts of, a lot of other countries want stuff as well as America. And
I heard I was watching RT the other night there, and I saw a guy on. He's a small distillery guy. He's new, and he says we're a young, flexible country, and he says we're not going to be totally dependent on
state,
the American
state,
market. What? The
state.
state? Shut up, Jude. But anyway, he was saying they're going to be flexible and they're going to be. Look, Jude, have you gone to any supermarket in Spain? Very rarely will you see Irish whiskey on the shelves.
Mm.
It's all Scotch whiskey.
Aye.
Is anyone seriously telling me that Irish whiskey, just using it as a commodity, as an example, that couldn't export a hell of a lot more to Germany, couldn't export a hell of a lot more to Spain? Dude, Irish whiskey is a far superior product than 90% of Scotch product as
Well,
whiskey.
well, as John Hume said whenever he was in 10 Downing Street and Thatcher or whoever it was offered him scotch, he said, "Well, we're not biased, we'll accept some scotch if you don't have Irish." But
Yeah,
I remember reading an article about this, and in fact, Irish, when people said whiskey, what it was Irish whiskey they were normally talking about. And
yeah.
it was only through a concentrated effort and a campaign that Scotch whiskey replaced
Yeah.
it. And I mean, the very fact that you call it Scotch whiskey indicates how far back it was. So,
Judd, know who was the main, know who the main man in America who blocked Irish whiskey and promoted American or Scotch whiskey? Joe Kennedy, the father of John F. Kennedy.
you're
He had
kidding.
some licensing agreement with the Scotch, and he blocked Irish whiskey
Uh, uh,
because he had the license or the import license or some bloody thing.
it was
And
probably it was
there's
probably smuggling it up to up to Canada.
yeah, somewhere up through Canada or somewhere exactly.
Good. That was not you. Well, it wasn't. Didn't he flourish at the time of Prohibition?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah,
So
he was
he
a
probably
gangster.
was, doing little stuff up in Canada, which wouldn't have been under the. I don't know what to say about the other thing that worries me is that this is going to have an impact on what I see as the item of our times, and that is a border poll. I don't
Yeah.
know if you believe that or not, but as an Irish person, I think that is the issue of our time.
Jude, that's gonna go well down the pecking order right now. Bread and butter issues are going to take over for the next, as
Well,
long
you
as
know what
Trump's
I
not.
feel, Pat? You said
Yeah,
earlier on about, there's such a thing as having a morality or things you believe in.
yeah,
And, even it does mean you'll suffer financially. I would
yeah,
feel the same way about Irish unity. If we worked
yeah.
hard to get peace and have at the center of it this notion of a border poll, why in God's name aren't there people out there working hard for that?
Yeah, because Jude, the Good Friday Agreement and the various other, you see, there was real anger and there was real bitterness and there was, I'll even say hatred. Where do you think the IRA came out of against but suddenly against the sectarian, bigoted state.
Mm,
And
mm.
then suddenly in 1998, this agreement was signed. And suddenly, Jude, by the way, we should really talk about it. You should be allowed to be Irish. You should be allowed to have your own culture. You should be allowed to have your, whatever else language, everything that you can think of. And strictly speaking, we have done. Now, Jude, I've driven around a good part of Northern Ireland. I've seen street signs, Ask Gaeilge, and so on. Now, anyway, which neatly brings us on. What do you make of that big row about the?
Grand
Yeah,
Central train
yeah,
station. I was in it the other day. Um,
yeah.
they haven't got the signs up yet, but what happened was this: is they built the station and everybody was dusting their
Three hundred
hands
and
off
forty
and
million quid.
and everybody dusting their hands off and say, "Well, that's that done." And then the new minister for the of infrastructure or whatever it is, she
Uh,
said we need to have signs in Irish. And as a result of that, the DUP has, well, I saw Gavin Robinson on with Mark Carruthers the other night, and he wasn't saying, I'm against this, but he was trying at the same time to say, I'm against
I'm
it.
against it.
You
Yeah,
know, he was trying to straddle. He wanted to cater for the knuckle draggers back home, and at the
yeah.
same time, he wanted to be in a position to say, "Oh, well, I'm an open-minded person, and I acknowledge
Yeah,
culture and so on."
when you consider the fact that they spent 340 million on it, when you consider the fact that they spent 300 million, I think, on a university, and none of this investment went east of the
Aye,
band,
aye,
west of the band, sorry, and so on. But here's the point, Jude. They're talking about the signage would cost about
aye.
145,000 euros.
That's it.
Nobody said a word when Gordon Lyons pocketed away 250,000 for this project, the 250th anniversary of the signing of the American Declaration of Independence, so that they could celebrate Ulster Scots culture in America. 250,000 has just been, and nobody does anybody say a word. But here, the native language of this place, which, by the way, parity of esteem. There are two sets of people in the north anyway, but on this island, and surely, the very least, there should be acknowledgement that many people on this island want and respect and need their rights acknowledged. And one of those things is signage at the very least to say this is where the culture of this place.
Why do you think the signage wasn't put in whenever they were opening the place? Why do you think that the Irish language wasn't there as underneath or above the English language in the various signs around this spanking new
Well, it wasn't
train
John
station?
O'Dowd. John O'Dowd was the minister there, so somebody maybe
Well,
asked
why
him that.
didn't he? Why do you think he didn't?
I honestly couldn't answer. Genuinely don't. Was he trying to avoid a row or whatever? I
Well,
don't know.
I'm a little bit Machiavellian, Pat. Now, I could be totally wrong. I have no evidence at all for this. But I think that it is at least the possibility that John O'Dowd or Sinn Féin or whoever said, listen, hold back on the signage, Irish signage for the moment. Just let's open it up. And then let's take a breath or two. Now, we'll say, oh, God, we forgot to put in the signage, and it'll stand out. It would
Yeah.
have been sort of smothered by all the other things, the
Uh,
excitement of the new place, if it had been in place originally. Here it is, doing a solo act, as it were.
that's very
And
Machiavellian.
as a result, predictably, I've heard Republicans saying this kind of thing that when you get a Republican in a local council, it's very, very important to get one in, not because they're going to be able to really, have any influence on policy, but
Uh,
it'll drive the sort of the knuckle dragger branch of unionism crazy. They have
yeah.
there. And is it possible? Maybe, as I say, I'm doing these people injustice that they waited and they said, "Oh, we forgot to put in the Irish signs. Here it is," and as a result, trigger. Gavin Robinson's in trying to say, "Oh, I don't approve of this. Oh, I do approve of this." Do you
Yeah. Well,
think?
there's isn't there a protest on Monday in
There is,
Sandy
there
Road?
is. There's
Yeah.
and they're saying, you see, the precious Boyne Bridge is gone.
Uh,
And
yeah.
they feel that this is an insult, a personal insult to King William III.
Oh,
Um,
Jesus.
well, listen, I tell you, Lear, this is the thing, Pat. I think in ways this should rebound in favour of nationalists and Republicans.
Yeah.
They're going nuts again about not an Irish Language Act this time, but Irish signage. I mean, the thing's
Yeah.
ridiculous. You got an Irish Language Act, and you're saying you're not going to allow the signage up, and it's very bad.
Yeah. Which is almost like saying that anything Irish shouldn't be allowed to exist. Culturally, anything Irish is unacceptable.
Yeah,
Dude,
but you see,
it's
it works,
ridiculous.
Pat. They've done
Uh,
it. They've done it with regard to Kisman Park.
yeah.
You've got rugby, you've got soccer, well funded, both of them, fine stands, fine stadiums, and No.
Casement Park's
No
gone.
Casement Park, really?
They don't want Irish language signed. They fought against the Irish Language Act. You know, Jude, and this is a place where now a majority of the community is nationalist. And by the way, the police force is still about what 75-80%. Or
Yeah.
you see, check the civil servants service. I'd still say it's about 80% unionist. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one shouldn't take satisfaction in this, but if that's the way things are, certainly to my mind, it's blindingly obvious that there was a selective support of non-Irish games whenever
Yeah.
these stadiums were built. And I'm kind of surprised that Sinn Féin doesn't make more fuss about it, you know?
Yeah.
It's staring
Well,
them in
Jude,
the face.
my favorite one all the time is McGee College in Derry.
Uh,
Jude, when you consider the fact that you were a lecturer up in Jordanstown, the university has now moved nearly into Belfast as its
that's
central
right.
300,
I walked past the buildings the other day and they're fine, towering buildings.
yeah, 300 million.
Yeah.
And they give crumbs to Derry. And then when the Derry complains, they said, how dare you? We're treating you fairly.
Is there still a campaign, Pat,
Yeah.
to try to get a cross-border? I think I really very, very strongly believe that a cross-border university, that is to say, with campuses in Derry itself, campuses in Letterkenny, campuses maybe even as far as Sligo.
Yeah.
I think that would be such an achievement.
So do I, Jude. And I really believe in it big time, Jude. Can you imagine McGee College, what do you call ATU Letterkenny, ATU Sligo, and ATU Mayo Galway? Jude, they would have about 40-50,000 students.
Yeah.
If there was some sort of cross-border cooperation, you can get this here and you can get that there, different disciplines, etc., etc. Jude, it would be one hell of a complex, not complex, sort of consortium of a university.
Yeah. Has nobody ever asked Micheál Martin or others, since they have so much money, they wouldn't think of putting some support in that?
Well, our friend Garvin Downey and
Darwin Downey, yeah.
the Derry University Group have been lobbying for big time, Jude. Absolutely.
Mm. Pat, final question. I know we're running out of time here. There's only seconds left. Have you stopped going to pubs to drink?
Yes, by and large.
How long would
Except
you say? What's the last time you went out for an evening to go to a pub? I mean, in
well, just
Ireland.
in Ireland, Jude, it's years since I went out to a pub to have a drink.
I'm,
Really,
I'm the
literally.
same. I'm the same. But I see in the paper today that the famous Padre O'Donnell pub in, I think it's Padre
Derry.
O'Donnell, in
Yeah,
Waterloo Street is
yeah.
changing hands, and it's been bought by Downey Brothers. It's nothing to do with Garvin Downey, as far as I
No,
know.
no.
But it does seem a shame. But they seem to believe in it. But I loved pubs when I was young. I
I'm the
thought they were
same.
bloody great. You know, you felt safe.
The
You felt
Downey
good.
brothers played for Derry years ago in the All Ireland final, if I remember correctly.
Okay,
Every
well,
day.
anyway, enjoy the
Jude,
rest of the day, Pat.
thank you.